Hey, what's up? This is Andrew Gouche here, and you are watching for BassPlayersOnly.com with my man John Liebman. Yes, sir.
Hi everyone, John Liebman here. You're watching for BassPlayersOnly.com. We're here at the 2016 Summer NAMM Show, Nashville, Tennessee, with our good friend Andrew Gouche. How you doing, Andrew?
Really good, brother. Good to see you again.
Thank you. Good to see you too. This is actually the third interview we've done with you on For Bass Players Only, because you've always got new stuff to talk about. You're always doing a lot of cool things. First interview was in 2012. Second interview was in 2014, so it looks like we're setting a trend here, a pattern for about every other year.
Even years only.
Even years only, okay. Well, last time we talked, you were getting ready to release your new record, and I do remember you were playing with Prince. And I need to ask you about that because of his recent untimely passing. I thought perhaps we can start with you reflecting a little bit on Prince, what it was like to work with him, what he was like as a musician, as a man, as a person, and anything else you want to share about Prince.
Well, it's funny, I tell people a lot of times when you're in a situation, you're not really looking at it objectively. You know, when I went there, it was really cool because he called me on the phone and asked me if I would be interested in working with him, and I of course said yeah. But you go to do the gig and you're concentrating on the gig, and I've been doing this for over 40 years, so I wasn't really grasping the magnitude of where I was, and it wasn't until he passed that I really started to reflect on just my experience. I was there for almost 3 years, and I did a lot of recording. I did a few shows, some really cool shows. We did the Montreux Jazz Festival. We did the Essence Festival, and then we played at the United Center 3 nights at the United Center in Chicago, and a lot of other cool shows, smaller shows, but I did more recording actually than I did shows.
At Paisley Park?
Yeah, that's where we were, And
I got to jump in on a tangent here. Tell me about that place.
You first walk in and you see all this Purple Rain memorabilia, like the motorcycle. The entrance that we went through, the motorcycle's right there. The motorcycle from Purple Rain, and so it's kind of surreal, When he saw me, I was musical director for Shaka Khan,
right.
And he saw our show and he came running backstage looking for me, and he was complimenting me like crazy. He was like, "Oh man, dude, you were great, man. Who did those arrangements?" It was weird because he was talking to me like I was him and he was me, and I'm sitting there going, "Okay, this dude is talking to me like I'm Prince and he's Gouche," But I think his reason, he saw what I did, and I guess he saw, or he thought that what I did would bring something extra to what he was doing. Because the first thing I said when I went there, I'll tell you the experience. He called me on the phone, and first of all, Cassandra O'Neill, his keyboard player, called me and said, "Prince wants your number. He wants to know if he can call you." And I was like, "Yeah, sure, give it to him." Shaka has just fired us. She fired the whole band. To this day, I still don't know why we got fired. That's another conversation, but literally the next week, Cassandra called me and said, "Prince wants to know if he can have your number. He wants to call you." And I said, "Sure, give it to him." A couple of days later, he called, and I picked up the phone, and I knew it was something because it was a weird number, like 065 or something crazy like that. And I said hello, and he said, "Mr. Gouche." And the first thing that came into my mind was, Prince knows my name, And then he just said, we talked like you and I are talking now. We spoke very casually. He said he had some things that he was going to be doing in the coming year and wanted to know if I wanted to be involved. And I said, yeah, sure. And so he said, okay, can you come to Minnesota? And I said, sure. And he said, okay, I'll have my assistant call you. So he hung up, and the girl called me back in about 10 minutes and said, Prince wants to know if you can come tomorrow. And I said, sure. And so she said, okay, I'll call you back. Give me your name and birthday and all that. And so I said, cool. She said, and give me her email. I gave her my email. She said, okay. And then like literally 15 minutes later, I got an email from Delta. And I saw that the flight was the next day. And my first thought was, okay, the flight's tomorrow. I have to go online and I want to get a good seat. I want to get an exit row aisle. And then I looked at the reservation and it said first class.
I knew that's where you were going.
And I said, okay, all right. And then she called back and said words that nobody had ever said to me before. She said, do you need us to send you a car? And I was like, yeah. So the whole time I was there, it was always, first class, just the treatment and the experience. And
Did you sleep there, or is there another a hotel?
there was a hotel near there that everybody stayed at, about 1.5 miles away from Paisley. And so that's where we stayed, and we'd go over every day around 1 o'clock. That was always the call time to do whatever it was we were going to do. You always went there not knowing what was going to be going on that day, So you might be in the studio, you get there and they go, okay, you guys go in the studio and we record. I did a lot of records, and I didn't realize until a couple of weeks ago that I'm on his last record, the Hit and Run record, because a magazine called me up and wanted to interview me about the songs I had done on Prince's record, and I wasn't even aware of them. And then when the guy called me, I said, well, what songs? And he said the names, and I didn't recognize, because when we recorded the songs, you never knew what the names were. We were just recording, and then he explained them to me, and then I went and researched, and I was like, oh yeah, that's me. So I'm on like 2 or 3 songs on his last record, So.
Well, thank goodness we have all those recordings, because he did leave us much too soon.
I'll tell you. So when I walked in one day, he was playing through my rig. He was playing bass through my rig, and he was playing 777-9311. And it's one thing to think Prince's music, but to actually be able to stand there and see him play, because he played the song on the record, and then I watch him play it and like, okay, that's how that bass line goes, So I stood there like for about 10 minutes and watched him play, because he loved to jam forever. And then he would be playing, he'd kind of look up at me, he'd keep playing, and then he took the bass off and handed it to me. And at first I was like, okay, just play it one more time. I wanted to make sure I had it. John Blackwell was playing drums, it was killing. And so he played it again, and then I said, okay, cool, I got it. So then I started playing bass, and then he picked up the guitar and started playing. So for about 10 or 15 minutes, we jammed on 777-9311, and that was, to me, that was the coolest experience that I had there, because I got a chance to just have like an impromptu jam with him, And one thing I would tell people about him, more than anything, he was a musician. He loved music, and the thing about Prince, he didn't care about the venue. He would play in front of 100,000 people, or he would play in front of 30 people, but he'd give the same energy and same commitment to what he was doing, and that's what I loved about him. Wow. Yeah.
I'm curious about something. You get the call, you have, what'd you say, 1 day's notice to fly out there?
Always.
What did you take with you in terms of, did you take a whole big arsenal of basses? Did you take your favorite? Did you take 1 or 2, 2 or 3?
I took my signature 5 and 6 MTDs, and it's funny, I realize now I have a lot of funny Prince stories. He's very sarcastic, and people, and he liked to joke around a lot, and he would say stuff like, oh yeah, Gouche's bass got all those strings on it, like, because him and Larry Graham were best friends, and he'd say, well, Larry's bass doesn't have all those strings on it. I said, well, this bass has those strings on it, and he kind of he chuckled when I said it. And then one day he was saying something about, and then I realized he liked the exchange. He liked the fact that I wasn't like, oh my God, Prince, I never talked to him. I talked to him like I'm talking to you. And then one day he said something about my bass had a lot of knobs on it. Why does your bass have all those knobs on it? Larry's bass doesn't have all those knobs. And I looked at him, I said, you know what? This bass is the reason you called me. And he went like this. And one time, after I'd gone home and come back, I brought another bass, and not my signature bass. It was an MTD, but it was another one. And he, right away, he said, Gouche, is that the bass you usually play? And I said, no, it's a different one. He said, where's the other one? And so I realized he really loved it. He would say to me, he said, I never heard a bass as deep as yours, you know. He said that, man. There's a few things, man, that made me feel really good, you know.
You've been playing Mike Tobias's basses since he was Michael Tobias, before he was MTD. There's got to be a reason you would stick with somebody for decades, literally.
It's like, and this is what I liken it to, it's like if you travel all over the world, and you only ever fly coach, then coach is cool. It'll still get you where you want to go. You'll get there. But the first time you fly first class, coach pisses you off after that. It just does, you know. And I was in New York, and I'll never forget it. A friend and I, it was 1987. I was playing with Billy Preston, and my drummer friend of mine went down, you know, all the shops were still open on 48th Street in New York.
Oh, I missed that.
And that was like a pilgrimage. You didn't go to New York as a musician and not go down to 48th Street.
I remember it well.
So we're walking by, and I see this bass in the window of Rudy's guitar shop. And
that's my story. That's how I started playing Tobias. That guy Dean.
Exactly. And I saw this bass, and you know, during that time I was playing Fender Jazz like everybody else. And I saw this bass, never seen anything like it. And I told my friend, I said, man, look at that bass. I said, I know if I play it, I'm gonna want it. And I went in, and I played the bass, and it just blew my mind. And I think SWR hadn't been out that long, but he had an SWR rig. And I was like, there's no way that this bass sounds like this. So I made him, he plugged it in, and it was Dean. I made him take it out of the SWR amp and put it in a little cube amp. I'll never forget it. And I played it through there, and it felt and sounded like nothing I'd ever heard. And then we were just talking casually. He's like, where are you guys from? I'm like, well, we're from LA. And he's like, well, you know, this guy's shop it's in LA.
On Cahuenga Street.
Exactly. And he said, and I remember years I drove by and saw that, and it just said Tobias Guitars. And when I got home, we flew home on Monday. Tuesday morning, I drove up to Hollywood, and I knocked on the door, and Bob Lee.
I was talking to Mike about him yesterday.
Bob Lee answered the door, and he actually had a big chain on the door, and so he opened it in the chain, and I was talking to him, and I said, I just got back from New York, and I saw one of you guys' basses, and it blew me away. And the good thing for me was I told him my name, and he knew who I was.
Wow.
And he opened the door and let me in, and so I'm talking, and I'm just sitting there, and he's talking to me, and I'm just telling him what I'd done, and he knew who I was from gospel stuff. I was the gospel guy, you know. And then I'm looking up on the wall at these beautiful basses that they just like finished, and he pulled down the first one I ever got to, the Cocobolo and Purple Heart one. I still have it, and Mike was over on the opposite side of the room working, like he didn't even turn around, and so I didn't know who was who. I didn't, you know. And then when I started playing, Mike looked up and turned around and came and introduced himself to me, and we've been friends ever since.
I can't believe how similar of a story I have. I was on 48th Street. I walked into Rudy's, talked to Dean, played a new 5-string Tobias bass, fell absolutely in love with it, happened to be going to LA the following week. I didn't just knock on the door, I called Mike ahead of time. But he showed me all around, and I got that bass from Rudy's, and then I called Mike. I got a second bass that he built, and I had to wait because he was building to display it at the Summer NAMM show. It's a 5-string fretless. And I just had a new book come out. It's called Play Like Jaco Pastorius. And I played I don't know if I should say this or not, but I played all the bass tracks to that on that 5-string bass. Never touched the low B, but the sound was so great, and that is the bass I used. So we both have a special place in our hearts for Mike Tobias.
It's like once you play it, and it's funny because I try to explain to people, you know, you hear these guys going, man, I never pay that much money for a bass, you know, but then you go buy something, you settle for something, then you spend all this money trying to modify it. When if you had just saved maybe a little bit more money, you could have got what you wanted, you know. And I tell people, man, you know, a Ford is a good car,
Until you drive a.
Exactly. It'll take
Well, I'm
you
from
where you wanna
Detroit,
go.
so I can't really say bad things
I'm
about it.
from LA, so I can't. But, it'll get you where you want to go, but it doesn't ride like a BMW,
right.
And if you drive a BMW, you'll understand. And that's what I love. I love when people play my bases, and then they get it, And when you play it, you get it. And so me and Mike, more than anything, he's my friend, and
Good guy.
he has an absolute gift to do what he does, man. And I've been blessed, to be able to have Mike as a friend and be able to play his guitars, man, and to have been able to go all over the world playing his stuff and helping his brand reach a broader audience, man. It's really, really cool.
Well, that's great. Well, thank you for sharing all the information about Prince. Thanks for reminding us what a great product Mike Tobias makes. And that record that came out last year, I am still enjoying it. I know Eleanor Rigby is on there, and We Don't Need No Bass and all the other cool stuff. Yeah. There it is. And Andrew Gouche, keep doing what you're doing, and we will keep enjoying it. Much luck, continued success to you always.
I appreciate you wanting to talk to me.
Always. And you know what? Maybe we won't wait another 2 years. Maybe we'll get together again sooner, because we haven't even gotten to what you're doing right now and what you're doing tomorrow. And we're going to save that for another time, because we got to move on here. But it's always great seeing you. I look forward to seeing you again, doing another interview. In the meantime, from the 2016 Summer NAMM Show, Nashville, Tennessee, with our good friend Andrew Gouche. I'm John Liebman. You're watching for BassPlayersOnly.com.
Players only.